of the Department of Professional Education, College of Education, MSU-IIT, Dr. Nancy R. Hernandez.
Pleasant morning, everyone. I am greatly privileged to introduce to you our resource speaker for our session today on the topic towards the development of a research culture at IIT. Our resource speaker's contribution to the field of education and research is exemplary and a legacy. His works span decades of dedication and focus as a teacher, scholar, author, and editor. He took his Bachelor of Science with distinction and teaching diploma from 1967 to 1972 at the American University of Beirut, Lebanon. He also took and finished his Master of Science at the same university in 1973. He also earned a PhD at the University of Wisconsin, USA in 1978 and a Bachelor of Arts at the University of Queensland, Australia in 1986. Our research speaker is a principal author of 5 textbooks, 37 chapters in a book, 22 referee journal articles, 36 published referee conference papers, 22 published non-referee conference papers, 7 unpublished referee conference papers, 7 published non-referee conference papers, 2 book reviews, and 5 other reports. He also co-wrote 3 commissioned reports on homelessness among young people in Australia, early intervention and prevention, 1997, broadening post-school options through curriculum engagement in 2006, and teaching numeracy in preschool and early grades in low-income countries in 2014. Our research speaker is a principal editor of 8 reference books, 1 special issue journal, and 3 conference proceedings. He has also been invited 12 times as keynote address speaker. The latest was in 2011 at the Khon Kaen University, Thailand, on the topic Beyond Student-Centered Learning Towards Educative Pedagogies during the International Conference on Educational Research. Our research speaker has also served the editorial boards of the Mathematics Education Research Journal, the Mathematics Teacher Education and Development, the Asia Pacific Educational Researcher in New Zealand, Widening Participation and Lifelong Learning, UK, Journal of Educational Sciences and Islamic Studies, Saudi Arabia, and Asian Journal in Educational Research and Leadership, Philippines. He is a retired adjunct professor of Curtin University, Australia, Perth, and is currently a member of STEM research group of the same university. He is also a visiting professor of the College of Education of MSU-IIT. Dear participants, help me welcome our highly esteemed research speaker, Professor Bill Atweh.
Thank you very much for this very kind introduction, Dr. Hernandez. I'm not used to long introductions. Usually I just say, Bill Atweh, take it over. Thank you very much for your welcome and for the invitation from the university. I'm so delighted to be working with you over the next 2 weeks and hopefully more in the future. When I had the invitation to join you last year, I jumped at the opportunity thinking that I will be able to meet other group of nice people, nice academics, and visit a new part of the country. As it turned out that we have to do all our work on the internet. So we're fortunate to be able to do that. And maybe one day in the future, I can meet you face to face and work with you collaboratively. So we might get started by setting the agenda for the next few days together. So let me share my screen. Okay, I trust that you can see that. Please let me know if you cannot. Now, before we start, let's set the rules of engagement. Sir Leo explained a little bit about the procedures, but I want to focus on a few other things. First of all, I do not see this as a webinar, sitting here talking to myself on the screen. It's more a workshop, and I want as much involvement from you as possible. So when I ask a question, please turn your microphone on, just answer very quickly, and then we can go on. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And then if you want to say something, I say something you don't agree with, or you want to ask something, or any other contribution, there is a button there for raising your hand. The moderator will notice that and interrupt what I am saying. I'm very happy to be interrupted. You can type in your questions at the chat box, and every now and then I will check the chat box, and the moderator will check that as well. If there are any questions, I can deal with them. And then we will break up into the room. So please participate in that and in the reporting as well. I always follow a simple rule. If you don't talk to me, I don't talk to you. So hopefully there will be more engagement. So what is this all about? When I was invited to be with you, we came up with certain tasks that I may be able to contribute to, and that is helping develop a research culture. I'll talk a little bit more about a culture in contrast to just expertise in research. We want also to develop expertise in choosing and conceptualizing research projects, and that will happen here in the presentations, in the workshops, but as well as in the private consultation in the afternoon. So we want to consider contemporary educational theories of education and learning. There are many, many theories and changes in theories in education around the world that may or may not be reflected in the research in the Philippines. And if Philippines is to talk to and participate in international events and publications, we need to become familiar with those theories. I'll talk more about them later. Now, I want to focus on qualitative research in particular, because I think that is a evolving area in the Philippines as it was around the world 20 years ago, and maybe we need to concentrate on the qualitative research a little bit more. I want to talk a little bit about research supervision and academic writing. Probably the last day we will do that. And then there will be individual and group consultations, as you have heard. Now, what do I understand by the culture of research? Many universities want to improve their research productivity, publications, and money that they get for research. That is, almost every university around the world want to do that. But the experience from many universities has been that you cannot concentrate on the productivity and the numerical indicators of research without looking at an overall research question. Both of them are important. And there are two understandings of the culture. The first one is managerial aspect of research. That research to be effective, you need to organize it, you need to have agendas, you need funding, you have to have administration of grants and dissemination of money and so on. So you need managerial. And successful universities have been those universities that have a special maybe office for research. That may or may not be very common in the Philippines now, but almost every university in developed countries in particular will have a special office. Uh, I know Philippine and your university would have a vice president responsible for research, and at times they are supported by some kind of an office. Now that's important, and I'm not going to talk very much about that. But the second understanding of a research culture is more sociocultural, and I'm more interested in that. The university need to show by organization, by funding, by recognition that that research is a valuable contribution. It has a high priority and it sits in with teaching and community service. So there has to be opportunities for research. A lot of times governments and universities expect that that faculty will do research on top of everything else that they are doing. And they don't provide the opportunity and the support for research. So the opportunities for research has to be built in the overall performance and activities and resources of the universities. There has to be information, flow of information. I worked in 2 universities in Australia, and one of them was great. They kept us informed about opportunities, they advertised, they send emails all the time, professional development activities, while the other universities did very little. So successful university and research should pay attention to that. But not only have research as an addition to the performance or duties of the university, but integral part of it. The nexus between teaching, community service, which I think you call it extension here, and research is very important. Research can contribute to teaching and can be based on teaching, but also on community service. One of the projects I've been involved in Australia lasted 20 years. And it was a community service extension, if you like, program. But we conceptualized it as a research, and we had several publications out of it. So the dividing lines between teaching, community service, and even administration and research should be very fluid. And then inclusivity and research. I'll talk about inclusivity many times this week because I think it's very, very important. Who is left behind in research? Many universities around the world focus on few people, few departments, few individuals. That they become the flagship of the university, and the university gets reputation by being high productive, but that is at the work of few people. Research comes with status and power. If you are a researcher at a university, almost everywhere, you gain certain recognition, certain power, certain privileges. I am interested in who is left behind, who does not have the opportunity to participate in research. Whenever we have concerns about quality, whether it's in research, whether it's in teaching or service or anything, whenever we have concern about quality, we should have concern about equity as well. We cannot separate quality and equity. And the same thing applies to developing a research culture. Now, let's look at the program for the 2 weeks, and I want to get your feedback. So listen carefully, think about your needs, and in a minute we'll break into rooms to look at your needs and tell me what is missing, what do you like to see. The program is always very flexible until that particular day. So I send the program on, now this is going to be a bit difficult to share. Let me see if I can share the, okay. You probably can see it, but maybe not very, let me see if I can make it larger. Okay. You have that on your email, but I will talk about it very, very quickly. Now, later in the afternoon, later this morning, we will talk about a session, breakup session, about your needs for research culture at the university. A lot of times in planning, we start from the top. The top people will arrange, make policies and so on, and then people like us at the ground will implement it. I'd like to turn this upside down. I want to give you an opportunity to identify your own personal needs for research. And then we will come back and report on that. And hopefully the administration, well, I'm confident that the administrators would be listening carefully to that, to listening to your needs and your perspectives. Now, and then I'll talk a little bit about the why and what questions of research and the concept of research responsibility. So today we're just going to set the scene in terms of why do we do research, what kind of research may be useful to us and society, but also what is needed at university to do research. Next, on Tuesday, I'll talk a little bit about the concept of paradigms, a little bit philosophical, but yet very important. I'll talk a little bit about introduction to qualitative research and some of the contemporary learning and educational theories. So again, it will be a bit more theoretical background. On Friday, we will diverge from the flow of the sessions to look at one particular issue that is bothering all of us and occupying all of our time, and thus designing a flexible learning environment. We're going to look at what research says about that, what are some of the principles, but also how can we do research from that, and I will talk a little bit about action research. Now, next week, we will come back and reflect on the previous days. We will look a little bit about, okay, how do we choose a particular research topic? And that's not an easy task for many researchers. And I want to spend some time brainstorming together, identifying some possible research that is needed at the university, in Mindanao, in the Philippines, or in education in general. And then we will talk a little bit about how do we start with an idea of research into a research project, conceptualization, and developing a research plan. And then the last day, I sit here, we'll go back and examine contemporary learning theories. I think we may have had enough of that. If not, I'm quite happy to talk more about them as you wish, and then talk a little bit more about qualitative research design. And I think there is one other session here. Reasonably moving. Okay. Day 6 will be about academic writing. and supervision. What else is not there? How do you feel about that? Any feedback? Now, there are a lot of issues, a lot of topics to cover. So what I would like us to do all through the week, if there's a topic that I just briefly mentioned or have not mentioned at all, and you want me to say a little bit more about, if I can, if I know anything about it, I'll be happy to do that. So please feel that you can contribute to the session. Is that okay? I assume people are still awake?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Yes, go on. Is that okay? Okay.
It's okay, sir.
Let me see where. Okay. We heard about the private individual consultation, and I really, really want to encourage as many of you to participate in those. You may not have a project in mind. You may just want to have a chat about an idea. You may have a project you want some feedback. I'm very happy to do that. You can do it individually or in groups. So you can send me a message on Messenger with as much detail as possible. But what do you want to talk about, and who are you, how long do you think you'll need, and a couple of options for the days that we are here. Basically, every morning that we have together, the afternoon will be open for consultation for the faculty. I'm very happy. Keep me busy. Otherwise, I play phone games in the afternoon. So please keep me busy. Is that okay? All right.
Yes.
Now, what I want us to do is something I have not done before, break up into small groups. So in a minute, you will be zapped automatically from this room into break-up rooms, and the break-up rooms are assigned automatically, and you will get an invitation to go to that room. In the small room, identify your own personal needs for research. It could be support, but don't just say support, just say what kind of support and maybe why. And professional training, money, time off, anything that you can think of with justifying that. And then we will come back to the big room and discuss that. This is your chance, and it's an important chance. Tell the administrators who have been very kind to organize this seminar and are as interested in developing a research culture at the university as anybody else. So I'm sure they would be listening very carefully to the problems that you identify. Is that okay? Is that clear? Now, we have about 60 here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create 10 rooms and assign you to them. Okay, are you getting the invitation to go to the rooms?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir. Breakout room 1.
okay,
Sir Bill.
okay.
Join. Okay.
Ma'am Angie. Makadungog ka?
Yes, ma'am. Makadungog na ko, ma'am.
Okay. Nadiri si Ma'am Adele, na si Ma'am Riza.
Alan
Kaya-
Perga.
Na ako'y laing ano dito sa laing na meeting with Balogo. Unsa gani ang ato i-discuss sa breakout rooms?
It's like katong mag-brainstorm man yata, Ma'am Ami,
Taon
about
sa?
murag bitag topics nga murag mga veritable topics man and how with a topic.
Ma'am Riza, si Lord, Shim, good morning.
Good morning, Ma'am Ami.
Okay, so pwede na mag-discuss.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, mabalik man siguro dito dayon. Pila ka minutes ang breakout room?
Mga 15 minutes man tingali to.
So kailangan maka-discuss ta kung unsay topic. Topic day ang gipangayo ani nga room.
Murag ang ako nasabtan sa iyang katubitang nag-ano na siya na mag-take time daw kuno ang pagpakuan bisan sa topic mismo. So what can ano daw, how is it done? Tapos mag-share daw.
Okay, so who will moderate the session? Ma'am Angie, moderate the session for everyone.
I think Ma'am Risa can take over, ma'am, kay murag kuan na siya sa research daan ba.
Okay ra na ay. Tanan na Ma'am Riza, Ma'am Adele.
Yes, ma'am. Ginawa ko, ma'am.
Pwede na mag-discuss.
An man to, ma'am, no? Kanang murag as a faculty, what is our contribution? What research to our going to meet that can help our students?
Sa una ko pagkuan nga dili ko makita kung nawong video.
I-off siguro ng video.
Hello, Shim. Shim, tagasa si Shim.
From MSU po, ma'am.
Hi, Shim. Good morning. Hello. Okay, so what will be the possible topic na ano na to? Ma'am Riza. So si Shim kay taga MSU Bugol siya. So in this breakout rooms, we will discuss some possible topics for research. So unsa man?
Pwede
Shim,
siguro,
unsay
ma'am,
mong ginahon na man, Shim?
Murag naulahi magud ko, ma'am. Wala ko, I was not able to start with the pagsugod pa kay naulahi amo ang link. Wala.
Okay.
So murang I've been observing kung sa patoy iyahang gihatag nga first topic ako gitanaw itong iyang gihatag nga program. Brainstorming wala man ko kaapas gyud sa kay hinay pud ako ang gadget.
Ma'am Riza, what do you think?
Sige daw.
Balik ko ito niya. Ma'am Riz?
Madungog ko?
Madungog, ma'am. Madungog kayo.
Dili ko sure, ma'am. Kaya murag nakalitan sad ko.
Lagi. Dali-dalion siya. Possible topics man daw na na gusto na to para lang siguro mahibalaan na. Rika, hi Rick.
Anong common sa ato?
Ma'am Ami.
Okay. So, Ma'am Riz, Ma'am Silor.
Ma'am.
I-discuss ninyo kay na ako alas 10 na na i-attend. So, para pagbalik dito kay Dr. Bill Atweh na i-share ang kaning breakout room. Shim, and anything, Shim, na imong ayaw ka ulaw o discuss ani nga breakout room. Rick? Rika? O Alan? Alan?
Yes, ma'am.
Feel free to discuss unsay kailangan i-discuss ani nga room.
Okay, Ma'am Ani.
Ako, nakoy suggestion gamay, ma'am. Not sure kung okay ra mo kanang teaching. How are we going to manage our teaching in this pandemic? Murag kana, something like that.
Lagi. Sakto na siya, ma'am.
Kana, ma'am.
Sige, Ma'am Riz. Padayon og moderate, Ma'am Riz, ha? Mo,
Wow!
discuss ron, ha? Padayon
Moderator
lang
agad.
mag-discuss, ha?
Ikaw, kanang.
Yanong importante man na nato siya buhaton, ana ba? Para
okay.
ano niya. Sige, ma'am. Padayon lang, ma'am, ha? Kaya mabalik ko sa laing table. Napo ko yung estimating. Pero namati
Thank you,
ako,
ma'am.
ma'am. Namati ako, ma'am. Salamat, ma'am.
Okay, kanang. Uy, dili ko moderator ha. Chika-chika na ni ato Kanang about kanang how are we going to manage teaching in this pandemic period kay nakita man gyud nato as of this time na we have started our class. It is quite difficult really for me lang sa ako ha. I'm not sure sa inyo nga part nga to get connected with our students who cannot really cope with the changes that we have in our online teaching. So siguro isa na sa ato ang main problem nga how are we going to manage kana kay murag inain siya nga kanang problem nato in line of our teaching. I'm not sure sa MSU buog Sir Chef nagsugod na mo klase?
Ganina na klase na kung sugod pero more lagi, the problem is the connectivity of the students.
Lagi. So kana siguro, sir, it just come out from our mind, my mind ha nga, murag, bitaw ta sa bridge.
Yeah.
We cross the bridge and we get there na dako ding problema. So siguro kana atong unahog trabaho nga, how are going to manage this kind of problem? It's really a problem for me. I'm not sure sa inyo ha sa inyong problema po. Pag-manage raman ng may atong problemahon.
Siguro ma'am, marag researchable siya. That's why I plan to conduct maybe a survey or research about that kay unsa ka viable ang online teaching, through online ba? Isa sa
yes, sir.
Ang modalities, if some chose to have the online teaching or online class, virtual class, there are some who are really deprived in our province.
So
because most of our students are coming from the far-flung area.
Pwede ka, sir.
Yes, okay. Ma'am. Nag-discuss na ma'am. Oo. Yes, ma'am. Ay. Wala, nag-discuss man by group na diri, ma'am. Okay. Wala man diri, ma'am. Si Bill Atweh man, si sir, ang nagpang breakaway. Mo reflect lang, oo. Time pa.
Group, ma'am, group discussion. Ma'am Riza.
Wala. Yes, Sir Shim. Kanang nakoy suggestion if I'm happy nga you have joined our group because you are from Buog. Siguro can we have a collaborative research about managing teaching during this pandemic time. I don't know how to craft good. Dr. Silor is good in crafting the title. Ma'am Adele, tabang.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Sorry.
Unahon sa nato si Ma'am Kuana, Ma'am Silor din, Ma'am Angie.
Oo.
Ma'am Silor din, Ma'am Angie.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am Silor.
Yes,
Pakita na ko si mong face, Ma'am Silor, be.
Ayaw lang sa kay kanang wala
open
ko
ba
na
kay i-open sa nako pod ako
Wala na lang to.
May
ilang ko pala wala ta mahilamos. Miming.
Sa kay kuan
Ma'am Silor,
Nakita ba
gimingaw na ba ko nimo, Ma'am Silor? Tanawa ako ang likod kay na ako'y ikog sa iring.
Yan, makita na ko?
Tanawa na
Makita na
ako'y.
ko rin?
Yes.
Ani?
Kagwapa ba oy?
Oh.
Akong
Inglisot
iring
lagi
nasa
na imong
likod.
iring da sa
Ay, muna na yung trabaho everyday.
okay.
Maminaw ra na sis kong trabaho everyday. Ma'am Silor, you are good in crafting a title. We need your help. Basta it's about how are we going to manage teaching with the kind of students that we have now nga kasagaran category 2. Sir Shim, ang among category 2, nami categorization sa among estudyante, category 1 to 3. O lagi 1 to 3. Ang 2 naay gadget pero ang connectivity very slow. Dili technology tools medyo dili kaayo good perfect. Ang category 3 mo nang naay gadget tapos moto siya ang good technology tools o internet connectivity. Ang one wala gyud. So kani sila sir moya mo ang problema karon nga we cannot really reach out. But again, si Ma'am Silor, si Ma'am Silor maay gyud na siya sa mga good title.
Sige,
Murag
title.
kita tanan.
I'll bring also
Murag
this
kita
one.
tanan. Good morning, Sir Shim.
Hi, good morning, ma'am.
Hello. Pwede
Then-
siguro, no? Nagkuan ang tag modalities, no? Kaning innovative, flexible. Nga naman pod mo, sir, no? Innovative, kanang flexible.
3 modalities
flexible.
gyapon ang gigamit.
Oo. So, pwede siguro ta makakuan og title nga kuan kanang management style baka ha in response to the new normal pedagogy of teaching, or pwede po siguro sir management style
Oo, no?
management style in dealing with pedagogical innovation of teaching. Management style siguro nato sir. Management style or management skills and in dealing with pedagogical innovations. Ang pedagogical innovations, mao na siguro ning innovative flexible teaching, sir. So, atong i-connect si management style or ang managerial grid. Siguro basta sa about managerial grid or managerial style. Then, with the pedagogical innovations we use, so murag ato sigurong i-connect sir ang atong management style sa mga teachers with the pedagogical innovations. Sa pedagogical innovations, dito na dayon ang mga difficulties encountered by the students. Kay although we have a very nice curriculum, activities, pero inside sa atong student learners pud nato siguro di cannot cope up. So ato siguro i-determine our managerial style or management style towards the learners' needs. Pwede po nga na siguro sir. Managerial or management style or faculty management style in dealing with pedagogical innovations in teaching. Across or amid COVID-19 pandemic. Murag nga na siguro, sir. Okay na ba na, Riz? Murag nga na nang ako idea, Riz. Ang managerial style sa teacher.
Teaching, the new normal na lang siguro, ma'am, no?
Murag nga na siguro, sir. Teaching, teaching style. Pwede ba ka, sir? Teaching style. Teaching style in the new normal situation? Or ano ba siguro, sir?
Ano yun?
Raging la kong idea, Ma'am Riz.
Excuse me. The breakout rooms will off in 49 seconds. Can we hear from Ma'am Angie? Thank you kay Ma'am Adele.
Good morning, Sir Shem and Ma'am Adele and all the rest. Good morning again. Kanina, before nagkuan si Ma'am Risa, ako thumbs up ko sa ganahan ko ana nga topic. And then we can siguro collaborate with kay Sir Shem nga ilang campus ba. Katunindot to siya, Ma'am Adele, 23 seconds. Katong teaching styles styles of kata paano nato nga sa ato sa MSU nga culture in dealing with pedagogical innovations na.
Innovation.
Oh yes ma'am. So ang atong kuan na ang teacher ug ang learners ang atong
Innovations.
paan
I-map
kanang data
nato man siguro ang
Dayo, i-blender.
Dili man. Kaon siguro.
Kaunon na. O, di tapo tanon ni mo kung kaunon niya.
Hi, Ma'am Tel.
Good morning.
Good morning. That seems to have worked. I'm pleased. That's the first time I used it, and it seems to have what I would like people to do in the chat room. If you want to give a note about the rooms, about that whole experience, not necessarily what you talked about, but just about the experience, evaluate the experience so that I know what went wrong. Now, I think this is a very important session, and I want to spend about at least half an hour on it. So I would like people to share with us what happened in the room, what are your impressions. There are no assigned chairs to those groups, so anybody can say, but I would like at least one person from every room to say something about the things that they have discussed. Now, I will share here with you, and again, I've done it only once, and let's see if that's gonna work, a whiteboard. I don't know if you can type on the whiteboard. You can choose the text and place the text somewhere and type, okay? And be very brief, like just one word or two words about your needs.
We can't type, Sir Bill.
You cannot type.
Yes,
Okay, I think I can set it so that you can type, but
okay.
But that's okay. I can put on my so then we have volunteers from group 1.
I think if, Sir Bill, I think if we click the annotate in the view options, we can type in your whiteboard.
Can you type in?
Yes, if we click the annotate in the view options.
Okay.
I think
Otherwise, do not write on this. I will type. I'm happy to type. But
okay.
Just a summary of some of the points that you raised. Maybe we don't need this one. Anybody from group 1 would like to start? Group 1.
What group are we, ma'am?
Okay, you can start any group you want.
Okay. So I'd
Yeah,
like to facilitate. Maybe the first group would be from the room 1. Anybody? Do you know your room in the breakout?
Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, I will start for, we have Sir Lowell from group 3. And I will do for room 2 or group 2.
Chris, ikaw lang sa group 1.
Okay. I think it's easier if you just talk and tell us what are the needs that were discussed in the various groups.
What one?
Geraldine, group 8.
You mean to tell me there are no needs expressed in that section?
Sir Bill, maybe you can call again starting from group 1. I think we are hesitant to talk. So maybe you can call again from room 1.
Group 1?
Okay. So anybody from group 1 who will present to us your experience with your group discussion?
Okay. Group 2 already identified of qualitative data.
I think we will start Dr. Beal from group 2.
Okay. Anybody would like to add to that analysis of qualitative data?
Also, Sir Bill, maybe aside from analyzing qualitative data, maybe you can share to us a little bit about how to present or how to write the manuscript, because authors say that qualitative research has a more flexible way of presenting the research, and most of us are familiar with quantitative research that are more or less very strict in the formats, and we are not familiar how to present our qualitative research.
The writing, academic writing.
Yes, sir, writing.
Will be discussed the last day.
Okay, thank you.
Both qualitative and quantitative, but I will take note in the writing to focus a little bit more on qualitative and quantitative.
Okay.
I wasn't planning to do that. I was talking about qualitative writing in general.
Okay.
Now, the sharing, because I think this is working very well. Right? We'll just talk to each other.
Yeah, this is better. Anyway, it's recorded.
Yeah, I will add a section to the academic writing. Now, I would like to hear a little bit more about analysis of qualitative research. Other groups discuss that?
Again, Sir Bill?
I would like to hear from other groups about analysis of qualitative research. Has anybody discussed this in the other group? Please turn your mic on and talk.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Hello. Good morning, Sir Bill, and to
good morning,
everyone. Allow me to share something from room 9.
Okay.
Okay. As what you have said, Sir Bill, yes, we have somehow discussed a bit regarding how we should interpret or analyze data, specifically qualitative data. Earlier, we have talked in our group that in the Philippines, kasi, in the culture of research in the Philippines, kami particularly is very focused on and oriented towards using quantitative method. Although we have also used the qualitative, but the depth of using is just on the surface level. So hopefully, sir, through this workshop, we are able to know more, learn more about how to write or to write and to write the manuscript based on the data that we are going to gather from the qualitative researches.
Okay.
So I think that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sharifa. Other groups discuss this?
Hello, good morning. Oops.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Bill. This is Geraldine from room 8.
Okay, Geraldine.
We wanted to know if from the findings, we can also come up with an intervention using results from qualitative research, because usually the results come from the quantitative research and not much from, we don't have much experience in doing qualitative research. Aside from that, we also wanted to learn how to do proper ethical practice, since we might be dealing with students who are underage and even those who have perhaps psychological issues. So to what extent are we to approach this kind of participants? Thank you, Dr. Bill.
Thank you. Thank you. So,
from room 7, Dr. Bill.
Some of those, let me respond to that. Some of these will be covered a little bit in the qualitative section of this workshop, and your specific questions are very worthwhile discussing. So when we are discussing qualitative research, if you remember to ask that question, I think it's a very good question. Thank you. I'm still interested in the analysis of qualitative research. I want to see how many people need it, because I was not planning to do it, but I can if it is a general interest. The reason I was not planning on doing it is it takes some time, and it's good to have some data with you. So maybe I can incorporate an introduction to it here, and maybe a future workshop, once people have data, how to analyze them. Okay. Ethics is an important one, and I have not, unfortunately, thought about it, but it's very, very important. I will include it in the last day as well. So I took a note of that. Now, sorry, somebody started saying something.
Yes, Sir Bill. Good morning once again.
Yes, ma'am.
Room 7.
Yeah. Go on.
We thought of converting thesis by the undergrad and graduate students into qualitative researches, and how we're going to publish it. And we have also in mind in prioritizing whether we prioritize instruction, research, and extension all in one, because of, and how we do about it. We would like to know about it also, sir.
Sorry. I'll ask you to explain the second point in
yes.
detail. I did not hear it.
We have 3 functions in the university: instruction, research, and extension. So if we can merge these 3 things into one, that we will be able to do research at the same time, extension and instruction, especially now that we are implementing the ICT in the classroom.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We are very interested on that. Thank you, sir.
They will be covered not as special topics, but we will have a session about online teaching or flexible education and action research. So that will deal with that. A little bit later today, I will talk about social responsible research that can lend itself to some of the issues that you raised in terms of combining service, teaching, and research. So these are very good points.
Hello, sir.
Other points.
Hello, Sir Bill. This is from Group 1.
Yes. One, please.
Our group is talking about how are we going to manage our teaching in this, or manage the flexible learning that we're having during this time of pandemic. So we're not sure if we could come up with a collaborative research and ethics of doing it, because in the group we vary. Not we are only not in one university, but there are also from other university in our group. So we come up with, we're thinking of a collaborative research where we could address the problem that we have now that we are having flexible learning or online learning with the students. Thank you.
That's a great aim. I'm very, very big on collaborative research. There are many, many good reasons about collaboration. That's across university, within the university, and with parents and students and so on. I think all through my career, I have not done a single research project alone. Not a single one. I always worked with groups. When I was younger, I was a participant in the groups. Later on, I initiated those groups and managed them, but I always worked with groups of people, and not only academics, school teachers as researchers, and even students. So I've put a lot of value in that collaboration. In terms of online teaching, we will have one whole day looking at online teaching, and then we'll have another session identifying major areas that people are interested in. So as we are discussing those, it is up to you to say, oh, this person from, I don't know what university is also interested in, let me talk to them. Okay, so I would hope that collaborative groups will arise out of this. So thank you for that. Okay, other groups. Now, what you're sharing here is very useful, mainly ideas that we can do in this workshop. And I will try to incorporate as many of those ideas. But also, what are your needs to conduct research in the university? What should the university supply you with? Not only in this, through this workshop. What are some of the things that will help your research productivity, working conditions, and so on? Other groups.
Hello.
Yes.
Once again. In our group, we have discussed about our the things that we need, especially on the mentoring side, and of course to have parang a glimpse of how qualitative research will be presented, because as what other groups have said earlier, that we are mostly into quantitative research, so mostly on mentoring and on the technical side. That's all that we have discussed.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bill.
Other points, other needs. So do I take it that all of you have enough time to do research?
No.
Okay.
Honestly, no.
Okay, would you like to expand that, please? Was it Roxanne who said that?
Hello, good morning. I would like, not related to what Dr. Gomez has shared, but I would like to share our outlook, the things that we have shared in our group. And so,
okay.
Yes. So I would like to add that about the idea of having a idea on qualitative, but we focused on how to access research journal and publications.
Yes.
Meaning without registration for our review of related literature, and also how we might also improve international linkages with other universities so that we can collaborate and present our study also. And also we need a software or a program where we can check our manuscript in terms of plagiarism and
Uh-huh.
the sort. And we also need, since we are working remotely and then we have no internet connection, so we also need internet budget for, or maybe an allowance for that sake. So that's what we
That,
have discussed.
that is really great. That is really great. Let me take some of those points and support you totally about them. Access to publications. Um, I, I'm going to be honest. I'm really, really surprised that some universities in the Philippines can offer doctoral programs without access to databases. Now, it sounds very basic, but it is a big problem in the vast majority, and I'm talking about reputable universities without mentioning names that have very limited access to databases, and they offer PhDs. Now, I don't know if they expect that you can do PhD on Google Scholar or on open access material. In Australia, when a university plans to offer a PhD or even a master's program, the government has a checklist of things that they have to provide. And one of them is adequate staff with experience and research in that area. But one of the most important things, resources. What journals, what publications students have. This is very, very fundamental. And I realize databases are very expensive. Yeah, I think it's $1,000,000 for one of the databases that I am familiar with a year. Now, they are very expensive. So I think efforts should be done not only at the university level, but possibly at CHED level. I've been working here 6, 7 years, and some of the access has improved in some universities in those times, but they still remain very limited. If you write if you conduct a research and, obtain a PhD and you want to publish from it with limited resources, not recent resources, you'll have no chance. You'll have no chance. So yes, I think that is something very, very important and should be given a priority, both by the university and even CHED. Plagiarism, yes, absolutely. Again, I don't want to name universities, but I've taught in several universities and I've seen proposals from many universities. There is a big problem with plagiarism at many levels. Now, I will talk about plagiarism, why it happens and what form it will take, not necessarily intentional or out of dishonesty. There are, I'll talk a little bit about it later in the week. But investment of the university in software that detects that, guards the reputation of the university. If a thesis was discovered to be plagiarized or part of it plagiarized 20 years ago or 20 years from now, the university reputation will be in tatters. So it's not only the individual, it's the university reputation, plus the fact that many people have lost their jobs and status because of something they have plagiarized, even a short sentence years ago. That's also a concern. and that should be a priority as well. International connections, or connections even within the Philippines. Your university is a leader in international connections, and congratulations to the people who worked very hard to do that. How did I establish my international connections? Going to international conferences. I go to sessions with people I don't know, with topics I don't know very often, and then talk to people and say, can I write to you? I edited a book with one of the co-editors from the Philippines. And I have never met the guy before I started working with him. I read something about his work that I liked. So I wrote to him. I said, look, I'm Joe Blow and I'm editing a book. Would you like to be a co-editor? And we worked together for about a year and a half before I had a chance to come and visit the Philippines. And I said, can we have coffee together? So through the internet, okay, you read something about somebody, you say, well, look, I'm interested in that. Or you go to conference, you hear a presentation. Make an effort to talk to people outside your familiar environment. I have been to conferences with Filipinos, and they're wonderful. They have a lot of really great time and do things together, and that's natural. But a part of the conference is widening your interest and contacts, and that's very, very important. Thank you for raising all these 3 points. I think they're very, very important, and I hope that the university will take the lead in terms of access to databases and plagiarism programs. Sorry for taking so long to respond to this. Other groups. So there is no problem in time to do research at IIT. That's good to know.
We do have problems regarding
Okay, let's talk about problems. The elephants in the room.
Yes. I'm on study leave right now, but I can remember before I went for a study leave, you don't teach only, you have other tasks as well. You have administrative tasks, or you're assigned to committees. So it's difficult to budget your time. And I think that's also true for other teachers. Plus, if you're still learning how to do research, it's difficult to find a mentor because mentors are more busy than us.
Okay. 2 comments. Universities around the world have one thing in common. They want their faculty to do more and more and more and more work for the same amount of money, same amount of time. That's everywhere. Not only because universities are nasty, government policy encourage that as well. We are human beings. We can do a lot of small things not very well, or we can do few things very well. We cannot do both in a lot of times. And we are professionals, and we need to take charge of our life. We have family life, we have social life, in addition to work life as well. And we need to push back. Now, I may not be invited again to talk to this university, but I can only speak my mind. We need to push back at times. In my career, I got along well with all my bosses, but I developed this thing when a boss comes to me and says, can you do that? I say, yes, I'm happy to do that, but I'm doing this, 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 and this. Which one do you want me to give up to do that? So I say, look, I'm busy. I'm at full time. Which one do you want me to do less of? And we have to fight for what is valuable for us as well. Now, with time, it's good to be able to do more than one thing at a time. So back to that, if we combine research on our teaching, then we are teaching, preparing, and modifying and improving teaching at the same time as doing research. So we can combine agendas as well. One of the big problems I experience in the Philippines, and that relates to funding. Funding for all projects in Philippines happens year by year. So at the beginning of the year, there is approval, usually in January. It may vary, but usually January, maybe February, funding comes in. And then a call for research proposals is announced. Then people apply for it. 1 month or two later, you get it approved. A month later, now we're talking here maybe about May, the funds are released. So we can start doing work. The reports are due in December. Now, if you take 2 months for writing, you've got 2 months to do the research. Now, that is possible for certain type of research. You can have 1,000 people, send them the questionnaire, get the results, analyze it. That is possible in 2 or 3 months. But qualitative research, intervention research, valuable research, in-depth research, forget it. Forget it. So what we end up with, research that is easy to do in those timelines, rather than research that is useful to do, but we don't have time to do. So the question of time and research is very, very important. We cannot have quality research with all those restrictions. Research takes much, much more time than we even plan. There's a rule, a thumb rule in research. Plan for the maximum amount that you think the research will take. Multiply that by 2, and then add 3 months. And you probably need more time after doing all of that. Multiply your best guess by 2, add 3 months, and you will still need more time. So that is a very, very important question. I don't know what the solution is, but it's an important question. Now, there's a lot of variations. I've been involved in different universities. Some universities, the normal workload is 3 teaching subjects. Yeah, it's possible to do some research. Some universities, the normal teaching load is about 6 or 7 subjects. Now, I don't know what kind of research can come up with that. So that's a challenge both for the university and the funding agencies, CHED and so on, to realize that there are issues in equity in terms of the distribution of workload and funding in the different universities. I hope I'm not offending anybody. Okay, other points, and we will stop. We'll stop there. We'll take one other group. Actually, we can take more. I think the points that you're raising are very important. What other needs that you have?
Can we have from another group, please? Do you want to share?
Okay,
Hello,
I will.
Jay.
Yeah, good. Go on.
Hello, Dr. Bill.
Yes.
This is Ma'am Silor. I am happy with this discussion, qualitative research, because being a language teacher, this is my favorite style of research. And then I am also trying to make some action researches based from the results of my students' problems, and then based also to my experience as a teacher. So I made some researches about this. And then I have a problem of publishing this to Thomson Reuters or ISI or Scopus Index, because when I find these journals, these need payment for publication. So I would like to ask, are there some journals which are free of the payment in publication? Thank you so much, Dr. Bill.
Thank you.
Okay.
You mentioned mentors, and somebody else in the previous answer mentioned mentors. Mentors are very important, but it's very unlikely for you to find a person who would sit and act as a mentor on top of everything that they're doing. So you pass them the proposal, you ask them questions. It is difficult to find a person like this. My mentors in research has been co-researchers. Okay, the first big grant I obtained, I was a junior in that grant. Nobody listened to my views. That's okay. I can cope with that because I had a very different perspective. But I've learned working, how do you do research and writing proposals and so on. So my mentors were my co-researchers, if you like. You work with somebody a bit more experienced. And as an experienced researcher, it's important to involve the young researchers as well. I worked, when I had a bit more experience, I worked with my research assistants as researchers. I put their names on publications and I discussed research proposals with them. That gives them some training in research. So the best mentors are co-researchers. I think they're easier to find than proper image of mentors. What were the other points that you just mentioned, Ma'am Silo?
Yes, Dr. Bill. The journal publication,
Okay.
which is free for
Yeah.
for
Look,
publication.
I think if we want quality, we should stop looking at what is free. What is free can be good. What is free? You know, like articles from the web and so on and so forth, on Google Scholar or ResearchGate and so on. They have very good material, but also they have a lot of junk. And the free journals, some of them are reasonably good, but there are lots are, not very effective or very authoritative. I think the university and Czech should plan to spend money on resources. I realize they are expensive, But if we really want quality more than just quantity of PhDs, we have to invest in that. Now, usually respectable journals do not charge you for publications unless you wanted open access. Then you pay. But there are some journals will only publish online and they will charge you for publications. Now, I don't like that habit. It doesn't necessarily mean they are bad journals, okay? But I think we need to start thinking, yes, publishing costs money or accessing information costs money. And if I want to develop my research projects using the most up-to-date literature and theories, somebody should be willing to pay for it. And that's not the researcher. It should be the university and
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bill.
now I will talk a little bit more about it. There are sort of other considerations. I'll talk about them later. Okay, any other? Can I add a major threat to culture of research? That's my observation and my interest. It may or may not be applicable to your university, but I have seen it quite a bit. Research culture, in order to be effective, it has to be on slightly different lines and roles as traditional functions of the university. And in particular, the more collegial development of a research culture, of research projects. Now, I know universities and institutions have their own structure, with president, vice presidents, deans, and so on. Funding comes from above and then distributed. And that's okay. That's okay. But developing effective research culture need to question that and need to be a little bit more flexible. Quality research is not research that you can impose from top down. There are a lot of decisions that has to be made top down. But the quality of research and the developing of the research culture has to come collaboratively and collegially. When a researcher has to get an approval on a research topic from their boss, they lose their initiative. They lose something from that research. Research is a reflection, I'll talk about that later, of who we are, our interest. And imposition on research and timelines and so on that are not necessarily democratic act against developing a research culture. The research culture, by necessity, should be collaborative and collegial. So we need to think in terms of how much feedback or initiative can staff, faculty be given to generate their own research questions and methodologies and so on. I have seen this more of a problem in some universities than others. Okay. One last thought quickly before we move on. Okay, I just want to look at the time, the timetable and see how well we're doing. Okay, 10:40. Well, we're exactly on time. Okay, there is one other session. And then we will have an open forum. Can I suggest, I don't know about you, but some of us need more coffee. Can I suggest we take 5 minutes break to recharge our coffee and then come back? Is that okay?
Yeah, is it? I think,
It's
yes,
okay,
Ma'am Riza?
Dr.
Okay,
B.
well, I'm doing it.
Okay.
I'm going to take a break to get more coffee. So you can
Thank
talk
you, Dr. P.
among ourselves if you like. I'll see you soon.
Right, so let's take a 5-minute break.
Okay, is everybody ready? There is a question in the, that was private. Maybe I will respond to it private. Well, I can talk in general. There's a question about advice for evaluating manuscripts. It's difficult to cover that because um, uh, each journal has their own criteria for evaluating manuscripts. What I do, I just read. I requested journal article to be in Word if possible, and I type in comments on it. This is not clear, and add some more, and this conflicts with that. This is the main uh, way in which I do the reviews. I don't know if the editors like it because they would like you to fill in their forms, which I do as well, but I think that kind of feedback is more useful for the author. It's the micro feedback that takes a lot of time for me to type. Say, on page 5, line 17, this is not clear. I'd rather go to the manuscript and just type in a comment, not clear, and things like that. I don't know that I can give other general comments about evaluation, except just be sure what they look at. I look at consistency a lot. The aims should be consistent with the data collection, with the discussion, and so on. When I talk about the academic writing in the last session, you will get an idea of what I value in academic writing. And that's not me personal because that's developed from experience and reviewing a lot of articles and manuscripts and my own writing as well. Okay, now there will be a general, at the end of the session, general answer and question and answer. We'll come back to that later. Okay, so with your permission, I can go to the next topic, which is how do we choose a research question? Now, that's one of the most difficult and most important things. What do we do in research? What do we research about? Where do the ideas come from? Choosing a research area is not an algorithm. You do this and do this and do this, and bingo, you've got a research. It's a decision, problem solving that does not have an algorithm, where we sit down and consider many factors. Now, mind you, on this talk, I'm not talking about research questions. I want to make that distinction, which I think is an important distinction. People come to me and say, look, is this a good title for research or good research questions? I say, I don't know. The title is the last thing I write in a proposal. I write the whole proposal before judging the title. I choose a research area and then try to narrow it down. And then after I articulate what I want to find, I say, what is a good title? So I'm not talking about titles of research. I'm talking in this lecture, in this presentation now, about finding a research area, a type of research, if you like, and then we will conceptualize it. I think I'll talk about conceptualization next session, and then we will choose a title. How do we choose research areas and research projects? Now, I want to step back before I answer that to say, why are we doing research in the first place? I want to address the question of why research first. Because I will argue that Why do we do individually, not institutions and not governments? Why do we do research individually determines what kind of research we do. Now, in another workshop similar to this, I asked people to divide into groups and say, why do we do research? And they discussed it for about 15 minutes, and we came back. We're not going to have time to do that here. I grouped the responses into 3 major areas. The first one is pragmatic reasons. We do research because our institution says thou shalt do research, because the government says thou shalt do research. So we do it, and that's fine. That's fine. Our jobs demand it. The country demands it. Sometimes we want to get degrees. We want to get a master's, a PhD, and thou shalt do research to get that thing. So we do it. Some people do research for the status. So, that gives me power, reputation, easy to get other jobs. Let me enlarge this a little bit here. Now, that is very true and very valid, and I want to diminish that. And if we are honest with ourselves, that is a strong motivation. Demand of our jobs. I call these pragmatic reasons. Now, there is nothing wrong with them. I have a lot of respect for people who do things because they're supposed to do. But if this is the only reason that we do research, then I have an advice. Choose the easiest, simplest, useless research, whatever, it doesn't matter. Choose something that is easy to do in a short period of time, do it, and then you meet the demands of your institution or job. So there are probably other reasons that we do research that also we need to be aware of them and make choices about. Many people do research for curiosity. I want to find how things work. I want to understand the world. I want to understand my students, maybe their problems and their perceptions and their values, the community, other people outside school. I want to generate knowledge for knowledge's sake. Now that is very strong in us. We spend a lot of money doing research that just wants to find out. Maybe we can say, well, we want to find out today so that tomorrow, next week, next year, we know how to solve a problem and how to do things better. So this curiosity is not only curiosity, but maybe useful later on. And that later on focus is very important. Now, it's very valid reason to do research and a good reason to do research. Internationally, we spend billions and billions and billions of dollars sending rockets, spaceships to space to find out if there is life, to find the history and the creation of the universe and what is, if their life is on other planets and so on. Why do we do that? I don't know. Sounds like a good idea. We all are curious. Is there life? We want to understand our life. Is it going to make our life better? Not so clear. Not so clear. We don't spend that money to solve problems now. We solve the problem. We spend that money to understand, and maybe that knowledge will be useful later. So the main motivation, in addition to the pragmatic reasons, is to generate knowledge and understanding. That's good. That's good. But there are other type of researchers and type of research that is not interested in generated knowledge for knowledge's sake, for curiosity, but to actually change the world, solve a problem, make things better now, not later. Now, I'll talk about the relationship of 2 and 3 a little bit later, but at the moment, I want us to be clear what they mean. One of them is generating knowledge, understanding, maybe for curiosity, for knowledge's sake, for theory, that may be useful later, but in my interest in this research project, it is basically knowledge generation. While others say, no, 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 I want to change the world. I want to solve problems, make life better. That is my motivation for the research. Now, let me talk about the relationship of reasons 2 and 3. The common wisdom that all of us seem to adopt is that we cannot change before we understand. So understanding is prerequisite to change. So I cannot improve teaching until I understand what the problem is. That's how we operate. That's the message that is ingrained in us. And not only us, in our teaching we do that. We cannot teach problem solving before students have the knowledge. So we develop the knowledge first, and then next week, next lesson, next year, we deal with that knowledge to solve problems. Isn't that how we operate? It is so strong in us. Now, there are some problems with that thinking. The fact that know now, use later. There is a problem with that. First of all, the knowledge that we generate, the theories that we generate, and the practice have the tendency of going on tangents, diverging. And there are a lot of people who looked at the educational literature, educational theories, and say, the vast majority of the research we're doing is not really making education more useful. When I go to schools, I see very similar problems that I was a student, when I was a student. So we have not dealt with the big problems of education, although we generated so much research and theoretical knowledge. The second concern about that, it is so easy, much easier to develop research that finds out for understanding than research to actually change. So what this apply is, today I have a project to understand. Next year, I have another project to understand. And then the following year, I have another project to understand. Understand. So when am I going to have the time to see what that means in practice? When am I going to apply that understanding? Research that aims to change something takes a little bit more time. So researchers who are interested in generating knowledge and understanding tend to spend year after year after year after year on research that understanding, and nobody has the time to look at research for understanding. Now, it is possible to do both. I come from action research background, and I will talk about action research a little bit later. Action research and few other methodologies are based on different assumptions. They say, look, I want to understand while I am changing, and I want to change while I am understanding. So my research project from this perspective is not only to generate knowledge, but generate knowledge while I am improving. And I'm improving while I'm generating knowledge. I have a preference for that kind of research. But we need to decide what kind of research is more valuable to you as researchers. Every research project, think about it. Who is benefiting from that research? We'll come back and talk about ethics later. And to me, that is the most ethical and important question in research. Who is benefiting from that knowledge? Not later, next year, next century, but now. Who is benefiting from I'm benefiting, I'm the researcher, I get reputation, I satisfy my dean, I get the publications, I get a promotion. Fine, great. We have to play the game. But am I the only one that is benefiting from that research? So it is possible to combine 2 and 3. Now let me talk about teaching. I said a little bit later in our teaching, we also have that assumption that we need to generate knowledge of students first and then applications, solve problems next week or next month. That is not the pedagogy that is being focused on now. You may have heard of problem-based learning. Problem-based learning says, do not start with knowledge generation. Start with problem solving. It is contrary to what we have been trained to do. Start with a problem and develop the knowledge within the context of that problem. This session, this program is not about teaching, but just to focus on the fact that as a pedagogy, that is not a good pedagogy. Generate knowledge now, solve problems later is not a pedagogy. And it's not esoteric or idea or theoretical pedagogy. It's a practical pedagogy. If we look at the programs in Singapore and Japan and many of those countries, they are using problem solving as the organizer of knowledge, not understanding and concepts. So it's not something esoteric. Now, in research also, that is a useful way to generate knowledge that is theoretical and defensible, but also practical at the same time. So reason 3 allows us to meet the needs of society and the practice of education, then focus on me. Now, sorry here, my battery is running low. I will have to check the connection. Well, guys, sorry about this. I think it's okay. So focus on problems in terms of research rather than knowledge allow us to meet the needs of society and the practice of education more specifically. And also practical, it leads to practical research that improves the lived world that we share. Not only tomorrow, next year, but now. And it leads to social responsibility in research. Now that concept is very important. Let me elaborate on it for a few minutes. What do we mean when research is socially responsible? Research is socially responsible if it focuses on all the needs of teachers and students as workers and human beings, not only the needs in teaching and learning. Research in education, in some countries more than others, seem to focus on how do we get the curriculum developed with the students. That's all we seem to be caring about. How do we teach fractions? How do we teach spelling? How do we teach science? Okay, it's as if that's all what the teachers and students need. Now, teachers work in less than desirable conditions, many of them. Last 2 years, we had about 4 or 5 teachers committing suicide. Students are dropping out of school, not because of knowledge, because of socioeconomic background, because of support, because of discrimination, racism, you name it. How much of that do we focus on research? We tend to think sometimes that research and education is what happens in the classroom, in teaching and learning. So for research to be socially responsible, I think we need to widen our understanding of the role of research to cover the whole life in education, the whole educational lived experience of teachers and students and people who are not participating in education. I don't know, can you think of many research on dropouts, on street children, on the very, very poor that do not have access to access to formal education? Who's going to look after their needs? Social responsible research focuses on powerful knowledge for both students and teachers, not only on the curriculum and competencies. Sometimes we tend to think, or seem to be thinking, that those objectives, outcomes, proficiencies, what do you call them here, standards, is the ultimate aim, indication of success. What about high order thinking skills? What about citizenship? What about belonging? What about identity? Are those important in education? Do we focus on them on research? Social responsible research contributes to development of children as current and future citizens, not only for employment. If we look at statements of aims of education almost in every country, career, jobs, preparations for the workplace seem to be our ultimate aim. And that determines the content of the curriculum, determines what we teach, what we assess, the examples we give, and so on. Students are going to be using that knowledge, hopefully, some of the knowledge, far outside their places of employment. And employment changes. What is needed by employees now is not going to be the same next year or next decade when those students will be in the workplace. And we know that. We knew that for tens of years. But yet our curriculum and hence our research tend to focus on employment. And then it focuses on the disadvantaged and excluded, not only the typical student. Now again, at the risk of losing some friends, I'm going to be critical about research in the Philippines. I'm going to be critical about research in education worldwide, but it seems to me there's much less focus on research in the Philippines on students who are disadvantaged, the poor, language minorities, indigenous education. We tend to think our research should cater how to teach something better for everybody. And those people who cannot cope, cannot participate, cannot achieve, we feel sorry for them. But they're not the subject of research as much. And I can give a lot of evidence for that and possible reasons, but not now. I will just mention it. that socially responsible research cannot turn a blind eye to the needs of the disadvantaged and serious. It could be physical disability as well, gender in certain areas. Now, the last thing is it follows ethical standards benefiting the participants, not only the procedural ethical standards of the institutions. I will talk about those ethical standards a little bit more, but as I indicated a little bit earlier, to me, the most important ethical question that I raise in my research is who is benefiting from my study? And I hope that we keep those considerations in mind as we are deciding on specific research projects. Okay. Questions? Comments? Is this far-fetched? Is it very biased?
Do we have some comments from the group?
Okay. You just like me, like to hear me speak, and I like talking, so we can go on. Okay, are there any questions in the chat room? I asked people if they have something. Chat. No? Okay. Now, some tips, some suggestions, some helpful comments. How do we identify a problem? Now, I'm going to use the example of a new PhD student coming into my office. I haven't met them before. They said, I want to work with you. I have no idea what to research. How do I proceed with them? I follow this method that I'm going to describe with you. The first thing I ask them, well, tell me about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What problems you face in life, and what is more significant to you? What is your values? Your experiences? Because I think research is a reflection of who we are. Research is not something we do. Research makes us and reflects us at the same time. In choosing a research project, you as academics, as faculty, will determine, and as PhD students, will determine your identity in education. You become the researcher who does research on assessment. You become a researcher who does research on the homeless people. You become expert in online teaching. So it defines who you are. But also reflect who you are. If you look at, I have done a lot of different research projects on different topics in different contexts, but if you look something about most of my, maybe 80% of my publications tend to be focused on social justice. Why? Because it's important to me. And I always choose research projects that reflect what I believe in. So research both makes us and reflects on us. So I always want to know where my students are coming from at a personal level, in terms of their experience, in terms of their views, in terms of their values. And then hopefully identify 2 or 3 areas that they may want to research based on that. So after the first session with my students, we have few possibilities. Then I say to them, go to the library and spend about a month, 2 months, okay? Reading, reading, and reading, and
Hello,
reading.
Mr. Bill.
First of all,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
I think we cannot hear you well.
Okay. It happens every now and then, and I have no idea why it happens.
I think, Sir Bill, there are certain positions when you face the side, we cannot hear you well.
I think the speaker is here on my laptop
That's
rather
better.
than the screen. I'll try that and I'll speak a little bit slower. So
Thank you,
the
Dr.
first session with the student, I identify various interests. The interests may arise from their experience, things that they have read in the future, conferences that they have went to, their politics, and so on. So we identify maybe 2, 3 areas that they may be interested in. Then I say to them, okay, hit the library. Go to the library and read and read and read as much as you can. Now, keep in mind, a PhD in Australia is usually 2, 3 years, more 3 years. So they have time to do a lot of reading. So they look at indexes of journals and say, oh, so-and-so researching this and so-and-so researching. Oh, yeah, maybe that's interesting. So I'll read a little bit more about it. Very shallow reading at this stage to see what people are researching, not detailed reading. So what the literature say about it is the most very, very important. I have some students who brings to me sort of like a semi-complete proposal with not one reference. You cannot develop a research conceptualization and proposal without various theories used to inform that, various research questions and type of research questions, various methodologies, and so on. A knowledge of the literature is very, very essential before a proposal, not after. One of the problems in publishing is not having adequate theoretical and empirical background of what we develop. So we need to choose something that we may be interested in and then read and read and read more. Now, there is another criteria that I challenge my students about. Is it really, really useful? Some people with usefulness are satisfied with, can I publish from it? If I can publish from it, if I can satisfy my dean, then it is useful. Yeah, maybe, that's fine. I want my research to add significant insight into practice for myself and for the teachers, and I want it to be actually useful for their life and what they are doing. How do I determine if something is useful? Government policies may inform that, but I don't necessarily buy government policies. Sometimes I have my own criteria of what is useful, what is theoretical, but it's a combination of, of issues. Is it useful? And is it useful is a matter of opinion. You ask somebody, is this useful? Yes, very useful. Somebody says, oh, well, I'm not so sure. So there is no definite answer to that. But thinking critically about our work and discussing it with advisors, colleagues, mentors would be useful as well. But I always challenge my students. Why are we doing this? We need to justify very strongly what we are doing. Is it doable? Can we do it in that amount of time? PhD is 2 or 3 years. Can I do it in that time? Research, as we talked at university, is 1 year. I hope that we can do something about that, but can it be done well rather than shallow doing? Is it doable? I have seen proposals where I say to the people, look, there are 3 research projects in this. This could be a research project, that could be a research project, that could be a research project. You can do all 3 of them, little bit of this, little bit of this, little bit of that. Or you can choose one of them and do it very well, very deep. So there is a compromise between doable, I'm interested in, the literature talks a lot about it, and it is useful. So we need to balance, if you like, 4 balls at this juggling. But I add another criteria in the context of Philippine in particular, which is a tension between global and the local. CHED, most universities want our research to be internationally competitive. Have you stopped to ask yourself, what does this mean? I don't know. I don't know if people who wrote that document ask themselves, what does it mean? Does it mean we want to research the same issues as the rest of the world is researching, using their methodologies, using their theories, using their instruments, so that we can publish in their journals? If that is the definition of globally competitiveness, my advice is forget about it. It's not going to happen. So if you research the same questions as international publications and using the same instruments, blah, 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 most probably you're going to get exactly the same results. I will be very surprised if you did it. So if you write an article, say, online teaching can increase the achievement of students in New York and London and Sydney and Paris and also in Mindanao, are people going to be interested? I don't think so. I don't think so. If we ask the same questions and get the same results, nobody's interested. That may be globally competitive. It's not really competitive, but it may be globally accepted, but it will be locally useless. Now, CHED, in their policy on statements, had this statement, which I love. They say, we want research to be globally competitive, but locally relevant. I like that. I like that. And I have my interpretation of globally competitive. I'll come back to that in a minute. Locally relevant is the important thing. If we do research that confirms what people overseas are saying, not only it will be globally useless, but even locally irrelevant, because we all know that. We know what the research says, and we reproduce it in our context, and we don't add anything about the local context. We want research to be locally relevant. Now, what do I mean by that? First of all, we need to identify local conditions as subject of research and reflect that in the analysis of the data, in the conclusions, to highlight what is unique about the Philippines. When I read research that is published here, many of it, I read in the title, what is this, and this in Mindanao. So the title highlights it's a local context. And in the subject selection, we may mention that it is a rural school in Mindanao. And then I read the total report. And there is nothing mentioned or informative about the local conditions, the local values, the character of the people. There is no Mindanao in the report, or there is no Philippine in the report. Now, I have lived in the Philippines for about 7 years. And I noticed there are a lot of characteristics of people. There are certain institutional particularities that are typical of the Philippines that are different in other countries. Now, I'm not saying they are bad. On the contrary, some of them are very good. The character of the people, the authority structures of the people, the top-down decisions, the values of the people, the resources available, all of those are very different to Australia, let's say. But then I read the report, and there's no mention of that. It's as if the report was written in Australia, in New York, in Paris, and so on. Now, that's not locally relevant research. I have yet to see strong educational research that inform me not only about achievement of students under different conditions, but reflection of who the students are, the values in education, in life, the resources, and so on. We need to start thinking about research that reflect the local conditions and context and people for the research to be locally relevant. So, what does global competitiveness mean to me? So I start with the local relevance, but we also want research to be globally accepted. I like the term global participation more than global competitiveness. We're not going to compete with the Harvard and University of Sydney. Forget about it. I don't know that they're doing a very good job either. So let's not worry about competing. But let us try to inform them and other people and ourselves about our research. Let us inform them about things they did not think about because their conditions are different. And we do that by focusing on our conditions that are different, not by repeating what they do, the theories that they do. By focusing on the local relevance, we can achieve global participation. This is my theory. This is my belief and practice in challenging local research to be both globally participant and locally relevant. So hopefully, in addition to personal interest, research interest, is it doable? Is it useful? We focus on what characteristic of the Philippine culture and condition and society am I reflecting in my research? Okay. That's my contribution. Food for thought. Now I'm going to give you 5 minutes to think about these issues and raising other questions. I realize here in the Philippines it's not very common to say, I do not agree with that. But I love people disagreeing with me. What I gave you is my thinking, my values, my experience, and I welcome clarifications, comments to the contrary, or other considerations I have not thought. Okay, 5 minutes to individual thinking, and then we will share. Next Monday, we will identify, we'll have a session to identify problems, issues for research that you personally might be interested in or in collaboration with other people. So over the week, record some of those ideas and why do you think they are important. But today, just general questions, comments about how do we choose and what is useful in research in education.
Dr. Bill?
Yes.
Actually, thank you for your input a while ago. Maybe we really need to improve on what we are doing. It's typical that our students, our graduate students, when they enroll in our university, they already have their interest. So they have submitted their concept paper. And after that, actually this is a true scenario. The teachers here in MSU-IIT really want to help students to graduate. So in that case, sometimes we really need to organize on what we will do and what we want to happen, what contribution do we want to give to Mindanao as a university. It's because if we don't have clear picture on that, we could not identify well on what we could contribute as part of the output of the research. So that's our challenge right now. We try to help students on their interest, and then for how many graduates that we produce on our master's degree, we haven't yet have a concrete, what you could say, innovation that we have that is very relevant in our local society, and then we haven't yet followed through a certain research that we really want to contribute something to our community. So I guess for my own realization right now this morning, our colleagues here, as well as the MSU faculty members, what is very clear for me now is we need to think about where are we going and what could we, as a university in Mindanao, what could we contribute to our, to our society where we are now? What are the local issues that we need to address? And I guess that's it. And I guess we still have time. We still have time to do this. And then maybe we need to reconcile now with our student interest, as well as guiding them on how do we make our research relevant to where we are now.
Thank you, ma'am, for very honest and perceptive and deep reflection on what I was saying. I'm not coming here as an expert. I'm coming here somebody who's experienced exactly that change and growth in research in Australia. We did that 20, 30 years ago. Now, that doesn't mean we're much better, more advanced than you. We still have a lot of problems, but I passed through that knowledge and I'm sharing some of my observation. This idea of counting how many graduates, that's a reality around the world. And it upsets me a lot, and I think it's very sad that universities have to count, because funding comes from counting how many people graduate and so on. This is the reality of the modern university. You in IIT are very privileged. I've been talking to various people, and you seem to be far in advance in your thinking about research and organizing research. Many institutions I talk to envy you. So you are on the right track, and congratulations on people like yourself and others who have worked very hard for that. Now, there are two challenges that you identified that are worthwhile to think about. One of them is, I think Filipino universities need to look at their programs and see how much time they are allowing in those programs for actual research. When I look at PhD programs and master's programs in this country and compare them to what happens overseas, you have much more weight on coursework than research, which means you're right, very difficult to do research that is significant, useful, and so on. I think there is a big room to look at the weighting of research in your programs. No, master's program, I'm not saying follow the Australian model, but just as an example, Australian master's is 1 year, but there is hardly any research in it. So we call that coursework research. But then we have another type of research, which is 100% research. So you can choose. It's very difficult to do both. At a PhD level, we have 2 or 3 years research and no coursework at all. Now, time is not the only indication of the quality, but it's hard to imagine research where you obtain a reputable, defensible PhD with proper conceptualization, good data collection, good analysis, good writing in 1 year. Now, I'm not saying the quality of PhDs here is not good. I've read some great theses and also some great people who are obtaining PhDs. But in general, you are comparing the 1 year PhD research with 3 years in other countries. So there is a room to look at that balance. The last point I want to focus a lot is the focus of the university. Yes, I think every university in Australia and internationally try to identify one or two big areas, maybe a bit more, of the focus of the university, to focus on that research. Now, that doesn't mean every single research should fall in those areas. You don't want to kill the initiative of the researchers, but it's good to have general focus of the university to encourage teaching and research in those areas. And I would hope that you would go through that exercise, and I also would hope that equity, social justice would be part of your agenda. Thank you for those reflections. Other comments?
Anybody who wants to share?
Hello. Sir, I would like to comment that I think your mention about focusing on what is relevant to our local needs, it makes sense, especially for us teachers in our offices, for example. There are practices that if we look at them, we can study them and we can improve them. And I think it is also related to what you mentioned earlier about managing our time. Like we teach, we do research, and we do other things. If we can focus on studying locally what we are doing, so we are hitting several birds at the same time. We are going to improve the way we do things. We're going to learn from it, and we can share it to others as well. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you for your reflection, Sherry. Other comments?
How about from our participants? Yes, sir. You want to share?
Good morning, Doc. Thank you for a very nice presentation.
Thank you.
We have been advising our students with their local research, and I'm very much happy for the information that we can participate globally by having our local research. We can still do our own culture. Could that be the point? That we can have our own culture as long as we can participate globally. That's what I get. But the problem is, how could we publish? How could we publish that some institutions that would publish our work could really allow us or let us follow their format? Could it be the standard, or we need to have our own culture? Or what shall we do to have our research be part of the global community? Could we have our own culture and abide the culture of the publisher? Or what shall we do so that our work also can be recognized globally?
Good point. Good point. Yeah, very, very valid considerations. Research publication is not as limited as people think. If you look at contemporary publications, there is a lot of variations. So people get away with quite a bit of variations in style and presentation. There are few general principles more than specific forms. But I think the problem of becoming internationally participatory or globally participatory is not so much in academic writing, but in using theories and perspectives that the rest of the world is using. Now, let me give you the example of South Africa. I have had colleagues for the last 20, 30 years from South Africa, and I met many of them in international conferences. 20, 30 years ago, there was only a handful of people participating, and they were mainly white South Africa. But then things have changed a lot after the demise of the apartheid. And Black South Africans started participating, many of them young and confident and very good researchers. And now they are quite well integrated in the international scene. How did they do that? First of all, if you look at South African literature, the vast majority of it talk about conditions in South Africa. Multilingual education, poverty, racism, okay? Bilingual, yeah, I mentioned bilingual. So they started by looking at the local conditions. However, they use the international theories and sometimes critique those theories or add to it. So that's how you can combine the local conditions with the global relevance. Now, the format of the writing, I don't think it's a major problem. It's the theory, and I'll talk a little bit later, another day, about some of the contemporary theories in education. This is my experience or my observation. Thank you. Do you want to come back at that? Is that, Shem, Sir Shem, is that satisfactory? One last comment. Last comment from anybody? Okay, can I make one last comment about my manner of speaking? You may have noticed I tend to call people by their first name. I come from a culture where calling people by their first name is not disrespectful. On the contrary, it shows collegiality, familiarity, and equality. So if I call you by your first name, that is not disrespectful. On the contrary, it's friendliness. And I would like to be called Bill, if you can, because that shows the collegiality that I'm trying to so apologies if some people find it offensive. That is not intended. Well, on that note, we might bring this to a close. Thank you very much for participation. I know it's difficult to talk and contest and without seeing people life to life. You can see people nodding and frowning. You can get some feedback. It is more difficult on the internet, but we all have to get used to that. And I hope in the next session there will be a little bit more participation. But thank you for the thought-provoking questions and comments, and I look forward for a session on Tuesday. Just a reminder that on Friday, we are meeting in the afternoon because there's a conference that I am talking to. Many of you will be at the conference, I think, but the regular sessions in this program will be in the afternoon, all other days at 9 o'clock. Over to you, Sir Leo, coordinator.
Right.
Okay, so
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Bill Atweh, for the discussion about the research. And of course, for update, we have consultation, yes, for this afternoon. Group consultation, individual or group consultation by appointment, 1 to 4 p.m. Yes. Okay, so I believe that you have already sent an email requesting for a consultation to Dr. Bill. So, any more concerns from the group?
By the way, the consultation will be using exactly the same link. It'll be here. Ma'am Juliet has raised her hand.
Yes, Ma'am Juliet.
Actually, sir, I appreciated your talk and I learned so much that Australia has this culture of research, the research culture in Australia. And I have seen it in your Google Scholar. But sometimes we need to pay, as what Dr. Silur has said, we also need some free. Are there such thing as free in the Google Scholar, sir, for our students who really do not have such amount to pay?
Yeah, I did address that issue, and I hope government and institutional policy will do something to deal with it. But Google Scholar has quite a bit of good articles. I use it, and some of them are articles that are published in very good journals and refereed and so on. But we have to be careful about that. So when we download something from Google Scholar, sometimes it says it was published here and there, so we need to look at the quality of the journal. But there are other ways to obtain things free as well. I don't know if you are a member of research.com. Sorry, researchgate.com. If you're not a member, join it. It's free to join in. And many authors, well-known authors around the world, put copies of their publications on researchgate.com. So you can download some of those, or you can request them. So if there is an article by a well-known researcher and he's a member or she's a member of researchgate.com, you can request it. And some of them, they will provide it for you. Also, there is a similar service, but a bit more commercial, academia.com. So you can look at that as well.
Thank you so much, sir.
So there are few. Now, there's something else. Australia and many countries, the academics, every publication we produce, we have to include it in the database of that particular university. Okay, so it is available to the public as well.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Juliet. So we have one last query here. Can we have the email, please, from Ma'am?
My email. Okay, it is on the invitation, but I will type it here. If you want an appointment for this afternoon, probably it is faster. What's happening here? It's not. Okay, here it is. b.atweh@oneworldripples.com. If you want an appointment this afternoon, probably it is faster if you send me a message on Facebook Messenger. I read it more than the email. But for future sessions, email is fine. Okay? I look forward to chatting with some of you this afternoon. Otherwise, I'll sit down and play phone games.
Okay, so there are no any more queries. So we are now we shall end the session this morning. Thank you so much for coming. So those who would like to set an appointment to Dr. Bill, you may send a message to his Facebook Messenger, Bill Atweh. Thank you so much for listening and for coming over. See you on the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Dr. Bill.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Bill.
Thank you, Dr. Bill.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Dr. Bill.
Smiling is Ma'am Zabala, oh.
Fernando, si Kuwete. You're so
Yeah.
guapa. Are you kidding? Say goodbye. See you on Wednesday.
Mm.
Roxy.